Next up, AI is everywhere.
AI.
And
Has
today we're going to look at some AI in FPV. We looked before at an AI created FPV video. And now we're going to look at an AI modified FPV video with a new website called Kyber.ai, which is like a subscription service. But this seems pretty neat.
yeah. So
It's
what we
basically
got
like,
here is some
obviously,
FPV footage, and then an AI algorithm is stylizing it. Is that about right?
yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like you can put
Whoa.
these different like layers and filters. You kind of can type like what you want to apply, and it applies filters based on your parameters that you set. It's sort of like a mid-journey sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing that applies over top of videos.
Mm.
And there's some different things that have done this. Like Corridor Crew sort of did a
Mm-hmm.
version of this where they, I'm sure with a similar idea behind how they did it, where they made themselves anime.
Mm-hmm. So here's their anime rock paper scissors video, which you can watch. It's very cool. And here is the behind the scenes of sort of how they did it. Did we just change animation forever? If you're at all interested in this topic and somehow you didn't see this video, this is super cool and explains the challenges with doing AI interpretation of real video. It seems like Kyber is the sort of ma- automating all the steps. But also,
Yeah,
there are some things that Quarter Crew talks about fixing that I see that it has this problem, like where there isn't consistent style between the different frames, so it kind of morphs. And it's possible that someone could even do this better if they followed the
right.
Quarter Crew tutorial. But it sure is easier to do it using this website, huh?
Yeah, I think this is basically like, yeah, kind of the first version of this we're seeing, but yeah, it's super neat to see this can kind of be automated.
It is, and it's really, I mean, it's given me freaking like vibes from old anime that I used to watch, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Macross or something, right? We've got this
Yeah, Code
battleship.
Geass.
Yeah. This, like, it feels like this anime battleship. It's reminding me of all those old animes. So crazy. I almost wish that you could have just a little more control over it. Anyway, very neat. Is it free?
No, it is a paid service that you can sign
No.
up for called Kyber.ai.
Oh,
For anybody who doesn't know, I put the links
let's
for
see.
all these in the Discord. So if you wanted to see what was going on, you can also check them out in the show notes um, down on our YouTube video.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. I was hoping it would be free. I guess I shouldn't have asked if I didn't want to hear the answer. I'm going to do the quarter crew thing. I'm going to try that.
That'd be pretty cool.
Uh, AI is it's crazy. It's crazy. Like
Yeah,
it's
turns out. Yeah,
what's crazy about it is how early we are in, like, there's this concept of a technological curve. I forget the name for it. Tom Scott talked about it once, and I really latched onto it, where technology is really bad for a long time and can do nothing, and then whoosh, jumps up really quickly, and then levels off, right? And he said the interesting thing about AI is that we don't know where we are in this curve. Like, we know that we think that it started ramping up, but, like, are we at the beginning of that ramp and it's going to get 50 times better or 100 times better?
I would argue that this is different than those other cases. I don't know enough about any of this to say what I'm saying, but we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about on the news, so that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Sure.
I think that if you consider that the fact that AI will be able to produce more AI, I think the curve looks different, because when we develop technology, it's through the course of humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we're doing all these things, but then if the AI gets to a point where the AI is building its own AI and doing a lot of the work, then it seems to me like that curve would change because we're not like bound by the way
We could
humans would progress
continue
through that
ramping it up.
technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But it's exciting and a little scary to think that if we are in the Model T cars stage of AI, Which, if you think about it, it makes sense. Like, the Model T was like the first mass-produced car, but there were a whole lot of janky, homemade vehicles that didn't work real well and didn't make it. And that's sort of like, it feels like where AI has been, and we finally hit the Model T and it's like doing something useful. I don't know if that, maybe people would disagree with that analogy. But if that's true, then it's got a lot of room to get way better. And given like what it can do right now, it's astounding.
I think it would be insane to think that it can't get way better. Like people are like, there's this idea that people say that these are large language models. So really they're capped out because it's just learning how words work and it's replying with other words. You know what I mean?
But
in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily learning like you think it's learning, and that's why they call it a large language model, right?
But hang on, what you're saying is similar to what Fortune said in the Discord. AI only does what you program it to do. All the AI we have are just pulling from things humans have said and done. It's not creating or thinking or doing anything except jamming ideas together, spitting them back at you. Very similar to what you said. And I think that argument, the response to that argument that I have is, how is that different from your human brain? Is you were born as a baby and you had nothing in your head except, like, basically you sucked up ideas and concepts, and now aren't you just in some ways a predictive language model that decides what to say to accomplish an outcome?
Sure. But I think the point is that it's just a different, like when you're training these models, you're giving them instructiveness. You're not the brain, right? Like I don't know, like we're applying things to them. We're telling them how to form. We're like shoving a bunch of data in and saying, this is the data that you need to use. And like, we're putting bounds on them because we're telling them not to do, I don't know. Like, I agree that in some ways it's definitely similar, but I would guess that it is different enough. I don't know. If it's not an electrical system that mirrors actually like how neuronic pathways would work and how the brain works, like, is it actually going to outcome the same way, right? Because like, yeah, I don't know. Like, is it actually having learned experience, like in the same way that we have learned experience?
How would you know? It's like the Turing test, and the Turing test isn't the perfect example of this. But if you can't tell the difference, how would you know?
Well, okay. The question is, yeah, I mean, that's two different parts to that. One is there something in the brain that's happening that causes us to recall things based on different methods, and like we access that information differently than a large language model would, right? So that would mean that we would come out with different results. And the other thing would be, does it, like you were saying, does any of that matter if the output becomes the same indistinguishable thing? But then people would say, yeah, but that's what art is, right? So people are going to tell you like, oh, that's true, but what a large language model will produce wouldn't actually be art. Art comes from this idea of this imperfect neuronal pathways and experiences and all these things.
It sounds like this is similar to the question of like, is there a soul, or are we just sort of bundles of electrons bumbling around through the world? And I think if that's the case, then it's a fundamentally unanswerable question. And because you have to define, like, I think that if you had a language model that was indistinguishable from a conscious living human, then that distinction, you would have to convince me that that distinction mattered. And I'm not sure what basis you would use to convince me that that distinction mattered.
So let's extrapolate. I mean, I don't know how long we're going to spend on this. Well, let's extrapolate.
Oh no, this is. I'm down for this. Forget the rest of the news.
Let's extrapolate for a second. Okay. So if you let's set up a version of this where we just make up a thing directly. So if you say, hey, I'm going to program this for every question I could ever ask it to respond like the X human would respond. Is that satisfying enough? Because it would satisfy the you know what I mean? Like, because that's essentially what we're saying.
If I were to literally program an infinite number of pre-canned responses.
Yes. Nobody would know the difference, right? So is that really a human? Like, I guess that's what I think the argument boils down to in my head, right? Because that's what we're claiming, is we're saying if there's enough pre-canned responses and enough ways it's learned how language works.
But don't we do that? Let me ask you a really offensive question that is nevertheless has some truth to it.
Okay.
Don't we do that with humans? Imagine a human who has a chromosomal issue or a brain injury, and this person has an inability to speak and express themselves in a way that people consider normal.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, some people, I think of that person as less human, and I'm not arguing for that. But you're saying if we had something, what I'm saying is that I think that there's more truth to the idea that your ability to express yourself eloquently in a way that creates empathy in another person is I do think that we put a lot of stake in that.
Interesting. I mean, there's certainly not an answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this will be debated for a long time.
Yeah.
As we all get integrated with AI everywhere, because it'll happen.
Yeah.
And then we're all going to be trying to figure out, like there's some new TV show that's out that I haven't watched but half the first episode of, so please don't spoil it. I can't remember the name of it either, so maybe you can't spoil it, but you'll probably remember what I'm talking about. There's basically it's a show where somebody wakes up after a long time and everybody else is on AI, right? And the idea is sort of like this AI wants to talk to you. It's talking through every other person in the world because everyone is connected except you to this AI. But they call it, not her, because it's a girl, and like those sort of things. Like, do you personify it? Does it become a person to you, or is it still a tool? Is it still a computer and it's not like a human?
Yeah.
And your argument is like, if we're just or we're just biological computers, what's the difference, right?
I mean, I'm not sure I'm making that argument, but I do think it's an interesting question. And yeah, yeah. I think that one of the most interesting things that AI is going to do philosophically for humans is really make us think hard about what makes us unique or maybe not unique. Because you say to me, an AI is just a language model that predicts the next word that comes out of its mouth in a way that seems to make sense. And I'm like, my God, how many dinner parties have I been at where I feel just like that? Like, all I'm trying to do is form a coherent sentence that doesn't embarrass me,
Yeah.
And I think there's parallels there that are going to really, no, I'm human. It's different because I'm biological and not made of silicon.
Here's another question. When all of this is integrated, is this a in the weeds question that nobody will care about? I think that's likely to be the case. Right?
Yep. Because these are the kind of questions that the generation that invents the technology worries about, and the next generation that grows up with it doesn't give a fuck. They just use it. Like, my kids don't care whether TikTok and shorts are ruining your brain and effing with your dopamine system. They're just like, it's just what I do. And that may be good or may be bad, but all of this, with our kids are just going to use AI, and it's going to be there, and maybe the world will be better, maybe it'll be worse, but it just will be. Yeah. The first time there's an AI sex robot, all of the questions about morality are going to just, it's like, I need to be alone now. Not me. I'm just, other people will do that. They'll be like,
this hypothetical person.
Yeah. They'll be like, I don't care anymore. I'm going to go F this AI. And it's going to be the best sex I ever had because it knows just what I want. And that'll be the end of humanity, because we'll all just be at home, having our AI tell us what we want to hear and pleasure us.
I think that was an episode of Rick and Morty, right? Sort of.
Alrighty. Moving on.
All right. Okay.
Thanks for that. That was really fun.